Hey everybody, this is me, Undead Viking, and this is PWNs, a game for 2 to 4 people, where each person is going to have a team of these cute little dudes right here, team of 4 people, that is going to try their hardest to beat the tar out of their opponents while keeping their own dudes alive as long as possible, so they can then be the team that is still standing. Well, I shouldn't say still standing, because while you can play until there's only one team left, more commonly, to kind of keep the game shorter and not to have like people wondering, like watching the game and not being able to play, you just basically play until you manage to knock one team out, and then whoever did the best job of keeping their team alive with the most health will be declared the winner of the game. It is a very simple rule set. It is a card-driven kind of tactical game that has a lot of like funny little chain reactions, things like that, that also are constantly changing the environment in which you are fighting this kind of a brutal war against each other. But you'll understand that a lot better when I show you how to play the game, which I will do right now. Alright, cool. Alright, I've gone ahead and set up a 4-player game of PWNs, and before I show you how the game is played, let me just explain to you what you're seeing in front of you. Since this is a 4-player game, I have all 4 teams on the board, yellow, green, blue, and red. Now when you set up the board, underneath these tiles here, you can see there's no tile underneath there. You do get several of these little squares, and they have 2 different sides. You shuffle them up, and you pick one for each spot. And then each person will take their team, and one by one they will place their PWN, or their dude basically, on the board, and with the following restrictions. Depending on which side you're on, you have to place your PWN in the first 3 that are on the board, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like that, or the 4 in front of that. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Now you can notice that there are several different types of terrain, like the 4 different colors. As you probably guessed, blue is water, the brown is dirt, green is grass, and yellow is dried grass. Now all those matter in some way or another, but I'll explain that in a little bit when I show you how the game is played. But the important thing is that you can't start in the water, which is a good thing, because when you land in the water, since PWNs don't know how to swim, they kind of just flail about, and they take a point of damage when they're in the water. So, and that's kind of one of these things about the game. Yes, you will be doing direct attacks against one another, but you're going to be using a lot of the environment for your assistance. You're going to be knocking people into the water. You're going to be setting fire to certain tiles, and then hopefully shoving people into those fires and things like that. So it's all in good-natured fun, or what have you. So just keep that in mind. But anyway, so regardless, once everything is set up, depending on the number of players, you'll be dealt a certain number of these PWN cards, and then you're going to go ahead and begin playing the game. Now, on your turn, you just roll the die, you figure out whoever is going to be first, and then you're going to start. You have 3 movement points total that you divvy up amongst your entire team. You can move one guy 3, and these are orthogonal moves. You can't move diagonal. There's nothing preventing you from entering water if you want to. Normally you wouldn't want to unless you absolutely had to. But when you enter water, after you go into it, you have to move to an adjacent tile next to it. So like basically you flounder, you take a point of damage, then you move to an adjacent tile when you enter water. But so orthogonal moves, you can move 1 person 3, 1, 2, 3. You can move 1 and then 1, 2, or you can move 1 and then 1, or what have you. You can do that over. Now, the important thing to remember here is that the actual attacks that you do mostly are going to come from these cards. Now, one thing that you can do is that if you enter into the spot of somebody else like this, it's called like kind of ramming each other, or like basically a fist fight kind of breaks out. And both of you are going to take a point of damage in that situation, and you will displace the person that is there. Now, here's the thing. You can set up chain reactions with these things. So if you had a character here, and then there was like something like this, you would move into this spot, you'd both take a point of damage, this person would move into that spot, they both take a point of damage, and so forth. And you can set up even further chain reactions by using the environment by the same thing, damage, guy lands in water, takes a point of damage, and then climbs out. And so those are all very common things that are going to happen in this game. And as a player, you're trying to recognize those possibilities, and you're trying to prevent those from happening. Now, of course, you have no idea what kind of cards people have in their hand, and you don't know what exactly they're capable of doing, but you kind of have to be on your toes. So the first thing you do, as I said, you use up your movement points, and then you're going to move into using your cards. Now, the best way to kind of show you the cards or the card play are actually to show you some types of cards that you have. There are 4 different types of cards you can get, and like the common one that you probably most likely are going to see a lot of when you play the game are attack cards. Now, attack cards are just that. You're going to be using these as an attack. Now, mind you, when you choose to do an attack, you have to pick which pawn is doing the attack, and then you go ahead and process the attack as such. Now, there is defense against attacks, and I'll explain that in just a little bit, but just keep in mind that normally what happens are, so you have a pawn, and you have another pawn like so, and then you resolve the attack. And so this is a combat, it's an attack, and it says, grab and chuck. Grab an adjacent pawn and throw them up to 2 tiles away in one direction from your pawn. If you throw them at another pawn, they can be reflected back at you. This would be with a defense. So in this case, if Happy here chucked Paul, he could chuck him 2 spaces like so, if the yellow player did not have any cards to fight against that. Some of them will be they'll actually say projectile on it, and then it'll actually give the distance. In this case, it is the first pawn in a straight line. Those feet there tell you that if the actual attack will force the person to move, that is the subject of the attack, and then this down here tells you how much damage the attack will do. And so, if you have a situation like this, like where yellow should be over here, I apologize, I'm just moving these guys around, but like Blue Lamont here, if they took a sniper shot, could hit Butch with 2 points of damage. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Now, there are some attacks that will have effects on the environment that you use them on. So here we have a fire hose. It's a projectile. It moves 3 tiles in one straight line. The affected pawns are moved to the 3rd tile of the range. It extinguishes any fire or dry grass tiles, and the hose crosses over turn to grass. So, in this case, so if you had, let's find some tiles here that have some yellow. So here, let's have Lamont, and he's going to use a fire hose, and he's going to use a fire hose on Paul, right? And let's just, for added fun, move one of the other yellow guys there. So he uses fire hose, goes, and what's going to happen is, he's going to get knocked back, he's going to run into his buddy, do a point of damage, it's going to knock him back that way. But then we have these 2 tiles that have the yellow grass there. And what you do then is you're going to replace those with these green, because you just watered the grass, right? And so now the grass has turned to green. Now, why does that matter? Well, one of the cool things about the game is because you have chain reactions, if you have fire that ever affects a board, fire on a green tile will just turn it after it's been burning, will turn it into just dirt, because you burned up the grass and the dirt. However, fire that ends up on a yellow tile, a dry grass, will actually spread to adjacent dry grass tiles next to it. And so that's why the dry grass versus green grass actually matters. And you're going to be changing the tiles a lot as you play this game, because certain things are just going to happen, and those things are going to occur. Now, some of them, like your attacks, like here's a projectile up to 3 tiles away, but dead rodent slingshot. And so they'll actually tell you to roll a die for them. So in this case, on 1 through 5, a vulture descends and pecks the target pawn. They lose a hit point. On a 6, a dragon crushed the target pawn, takes 3 points of damage. And so if you did an attack, you just take the die, you roll, see what you get. In this case, it's a 2. You didn't get a 6, so you do the 1 point of damage. And then some of them, another environment thing. Here you go. A ring of fire creates fire all the way around it and forces everybody back 1. And then, great thing to have if you're surrounding a bunch of your opponents, so you can do a ton of damage quickly. And it says surrounding grass and dry grass tiles turn to fire. So, as I just said. So, and there are sometimes, and like finally just one more, I'll show you, Scary Mask. So 1 additional tile away, affected pawn runs in a straight line away from your pawn, and then will go straight line and so forth. And then you can set up chain reactions with those as well. So just keep in mind, and there's like a ton more in there. I wasn't going to go through every single tile and show you how those work, but just, that's what it's not exactly like. I mean, some of them, like a sniper rifle, obviously that's kind of serious, but for the most part, this is a very whimsical type of combat game, and nobody is killed. You're just knocked out, right? Okay, so anyway, so then you have also, instead of attack cards, you have these tiles, these cards that are purple, and these are environment ones. And so, like an earthquake causes all opponents standing on a dirt tile to lose 1 hit point. So you look at everybody that's on a dirt, and they take a point of damage, and then pick an already existing unoccupied dirt tile and roll a die. On a 5 or 6, that tile turns into a hole. And so in each case, you take one of these tiles and you place it on there, and if a pwn ever falls into a hole for any reason, they are automatically KO'd and they're out of the game. Holes are bad. You don't want to be around them. You don't want anybody to be able to loft you into one either. Draw it, pick a mega tile on the board and change all the grass tiles to dry grass. So pretty straightforward. And if there's dry grass, it could possibly start on fire, which is great for a chain reaction. Remember, the fire can spread and things like that. And then Flash Flood. A Flash Flood causes 1 water tile to expand to all of its surrounding tiles, and then affected opponents decide where to swim to. So you can obviously, that's another one where you can affect a bunch of people, that you can dunk them in the water so they can take damage, because they aren't very good swimmers, as I said. Now you can, normally, like you play, during the first card phase, you're doing an attack card or an elemental card. Then the second card phase of your turn, you get to do a green card if you have one that will heal. And so playing any pretty straightforward, a small aid kit, you heal 2 points of damage, so on and so forth. Pretty simple. And then other ones are different, like Dark Transfer. Select an enemy opponent up to 2 tiles away from yours, take 1 hit point from them, and then transfer over to you. And so you can do things like that. And I should mention that you do have a player card, as you probably had guessed, for each one of your pawns. It kind of tells you the name, smelly, tells them what they say or whatever. These are your hit points. After you're down a certain number of hit points, you're knocked out. And you have spots for these abilities and these effects, and I'll talk about those in just a quick little bit. But pretty straightforward. Effects are if you get poisoned, there's certain cards, attacks that'll poison you, and then you'll place that effect there until you get healed. You're just taking a point of damage each turn. Each person, to keep track of your hit points, you just have your little health marker, and it just goes down slowly for that. And there you go. I mean, you're just going to keep track of all of those things on your little card. If your guy gets knocked out, you just turn it over to show this gray side, to show that they're knocked out. They're not coming back, but you do that just to show where you're at. Okay, the last type of card that you have are these slightly different. Actually, I apologize. These are not. These are more bluish. I don't know. I kind of, they're a little close, but this is more of a violet blue, and this is more of a purpley purple. But anyway, so these are the reaction cards, and these are ones that you use to do things. So if your opponent is affected by a projectile, you just turn this card over. Instead of the attack damaging, you take the card and put it in your hand, and then then the attack player will move on to their health phase, so nothing happens. This is a plunger, which is a blocking card where if your opponent is going to be forced to move, he sticks the plunger in the ground and he can't move. So there's different types of reaction cards, and then you play those obviously as a reaction on somebody else's turn when they try to do something to you. So the game just continues like that. You do get to draw up to your maximum level of cards. So you get to restock at the end after everybody goes. You restock your cards, and so you're going to have those 4 cards or more cards depending on the number of players. With 3 players, you have 5 cards, and 2 players you have 5 cards. But with 4 players, you have 4, and so you play the game. As long as you're playing the standard rule set, you play the game until one team has lost all 4 of their pawns. When that happens, then each team gets 3 points for each remaining pawn that they have, and then 1 point for each hit point that their team has. and then you total the number of points, and whoever has the most points will win the game. Now you can do a last man standing type of situation where like you're just going to keep going until everybody is knocked out except for one team, and of course that's obviously who's going to win. And you can play games of capture the flag and stuff like that as well. So I mean there are different variations on the type of game that you're playing. Oh, I should have mentioned there is one other thing. There are like freeze attacks that allow you to freeze ice, and then of course you can freeze the water. Of course, then you can walk across it. But if you are on there and somebody uses a fire attack on it, it will of course melt, as you could probably guess, and then you would fall into the water, taking damage as normal. Now, as I said, this game is very whimsical. One of the things I really love about it is that it doesn't take itself too seriously. But the game really, I mean, if they had wanted to make this a super serious, like, tactical, like, fighting game, they could have gone with a way different, like, theme, if you will. But this was a game that was about, beating the tar out of each other, but it was something that I didn't have any problems with as far as, like, showing it to my family and having, like, me playing it with my daughter or my wife, because it wasn't like super serious, and we can kind of laugh and giggle about it as we were playing it. Plus, it is a game that like it has pretty much like a page of rules total. But other than that, everything else is just on the cards and with different actions and what have you. And it really reminded me of a game I played a lot of a long time ago. But I'll talk more about that in my final thoughts, which I will do right now. Pwns. Alright, cool. So there you go. You should have a really good idea of how the game is played. I mentioned it reminded me a lot of a game that I played a lot of when I was younger. Now, one of the games that actually, like, a board game, it was a trick, because I was actually going to mention a video game that I played a lot when I was younger. But if you ever played the game Frag from Steve Jackson Games, the game kind of reminded me a little bit of that, just kind of running around, but that was like one person. Or I guess you could play with teams, but regardless. But the arcade game, I shouldn't say arcade game, but the video game that it reminded me a great deal of that I played was Worms. If you ever played Worms, I played it a ton on my old PlayStation, which was this kind of like silly whimsical game of these worms that were on these battlefields, these kind of randomly generated battlefields that would be beating the tar out of each other. These worms with like machine guns and missiles and airstrikes and what have you. And while that isn't really a direct correlation with what you're seeing here, it just after like the second or third time I played it, I just was like, it was just kind of like that same. Yes, it is kind of a game about combat, and it's a game about knocking each other around and knocking your opponents out. But you don't really consider it to be like brutal or like, as I said, it's like they could have probably gone with a theme that was like really grim and dark and dirty or whatever, but they didn't. They kind of kept it lighthearted, and you kind of remove the stigma, I guess, in a way, of the combat and killing and death and whatever from the game. And what you have in the end is just, like I said, a very light-hearted, whimsical game that you can have a lot of fun with, and have a lot of fun with as far as the reactions of the other players as you are doing your dastardly attacks and card play or whatever to do their characters in. Now, what I really enjoyed a lot about this was two things actually. I played this a few times with my daughter, 1 versus 1, and as I've said in a few or more than a few times in these videos, is my number one person that I play games with now is my 8-year-old daughter. And she's becoming quite the fan of this designer board game world that her dad is a part of. And there's nothing she likes more than defeating me, especially in a game like this, where she can actually, take my characters and throw them off the board and, cheer herself on, and she's really good at stuff like this. She can figure out the different card combos. She can line up certain shots, line up certain reactions or whatever. And I really enjoyed watching her giggle with glee in taking me out. Now, the other thing that I liked was I really enjoyed playing this with my gaming group, the guys that I've been gaming with for years and years. Basically because we have long-standing, long-held grudges against each other for games in the past. And so when we play games like this, we're always doing the game beyond the game, the talking, the trash talking, the pleas for mercy, the negotiations of having to work together to knock somebody else out so there's a chance that, we can actually win, and especially when you play the version of the game where, as soon as one team is gone, then the game is over. And so, like, if you have two people and, like, a guy has three, he's probably going to win because he's got the most team left. And if you're down to the one person having the one, that person's going to try as hard as they can to take that last character out. And so all of a sudden you find yourself teaming up with the rest of the people to try to keep that one person alive, diving in front of him to putting blocks, so he can't move his guys to get to him. But I mean, and it is then, the judicious use of saving your cards for certain situations, and also perfect placement of your dudes on the map really come in handy. And so this is one of those games where because of the reveal, the moment of the person playing the card and then seeing if anybody can react to it, I love those moments in games. I love games that tell stories, and I definitely enjoyed my plays of this for that reason, because of the fact that everybody is immersed in the game, everybody is interacting with the game, and everybody there's nobody sitting on a phone or having a conversation about the latest Avengers movie or whatever while people are taking their turns, because you want to see what they're doing, you want to be able to react to it, and especially if you're going to be declaring some sort of oath of vengeance or revenge because somebody just did something rather despicable to you, especially if you thought you had a treaty with them. But anyway, so there you go. That is Pwns. I enjoyed it a great deal. As far as if you think you'd like it, if you want a tactical card-based combat game, and you have a group of friends that, and this, that would dig this sort of thing and dig this kind of head-to-head matchup, if you will, I think you're really going to enjoy this, and I think you should check it out. So if you have any questions about Pwns, go ahead and ask away. I'll answer those to the best of my ability. As always, thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video, and until next time, this is me and the Undead Viking telling you to have yourself one heck of an awesome day. Alright, bye-bye.